We now head to the great state of Texas for the story of an unexplained phenomenon which occurred in, of all places, a suburban kitchen. March 2017. Erica Garner is home alone in her house just outside Houston. Her husband has left for a business trip.
I was outside, I was playing with my 2 dogs, and I noticed something very strange on my rooftop. There was black birds going in a circle. I had never seen that before.
This feels like some sort of omen as Erica goes back inside. She's giving water to her dogs when suddenly...
Oh! What was that?
Let's freeze on that, because if you blink, you'll miss it. A strange blue light streaking through the room, leaving Erica stunned and momentarily at a loss for words.
That was weird.
It was almost like plasma. Everything in the room turned completely white, almost like an explosion, and my eyes started burning.
Okay, it's really weird.
Even stranger, the flash only lasts a second, though Erica says it felt much longer.
What was that?
It traveled almost like it was a train coming across the room, slowly coming in for a stop. And this happened for all about 7 seconds.
And that night, things get downright funky.
I had trouble sleeping, I was having some strange dreams, and it definitely impacted me.
Erica's dreams of pink and purple galaxies make her feel like she's been transported through time. And she wonders if the blue flash could have been an extraterrestrial force.
Into my research, trying to figure out what possibly a blue beam of light could come from. People have said they've experienced alien abductions and they might see a blue beam of light.
One similar case happened in 1975. An Arizona logger named Travis Walton disappeared after walking toward an unidentified beam of light in the forest. He recalled being transported to a strange place surrounded by alien beings. And when he made it home, he was shocked to learn he'd been gone for 5 days.
There are definitely things in this world that we do not understand.
So what is Erica's blue flash? Well, we know it's not her security camera malfunctioning because we can hear her reacting in real time.
Oh, what was that?
So the first thing we did was a proper analysis of the footage. Photography expert Andrew McCarthy starts by examining the footage frame by frame.
So right after this, the camera lost several frames. You see a distinct jump. Her hair moves, the dogs move. It's just a significant jump. She said it was 7 seconds. I'm not sure if it was 7 seconds, but it was a long time, long enough that they significantly shifted positions.
But McCarthy says there's something else that's even stranger.
What didn't make sense to me is nothing here is casting a shadow. It seems like the light source would be coming behind the camera to cause this, but you would see some kind of shadow cast on the legs of these chairs, you know, on the dogs. But you don't see any of that. It's just bright, and it's uniformly bright.
Forensic investigator Chase Klotsky is curious if the flash could be something as simple as a burnt-out light bulb. So she asks the Garners to run a test.
Erica and her husband put this light bulb in, and they tapped it. And if you tap it long enough, it burned out. Once you compare when the light bulb blows out and that reaction, and you put it next to the blue flash, they're not even close.
Okay, so if it wasn't a blown bulb, was it possibly a strike of lightning from outside? Atmospheric scientist Deanna Hentz reviews the local weather radar from that day.
What you're seeing is that a round of fairly intense thunderstorms went through the Houston area, but it was about 1 o'clock in the morning, whereas this video was taken at 11:30 in the morning. That really leads me to think that lightning is not responsible for that flash.
Some experts believe wormholes in the universe create paths to move backwards in time and through parallel universes. Perhaps the blue flash was one such path.
I stand more on the side of this being a time glitch. It's an error in our time-space fabric.
What was that?
So what is it? The strange jump in the footage does point to some kind of time glitch, but whether it's caused by an alien force, a wormhole, or something else is unclear. So for now, I'm prepared to call this a genuine unexplained phenomenon. We take you back to 1971, the village of Belmez in Andalusia, Spain. Local resident Maria Gomez Camara discovers a strange discoloration on her concrete kitchen floor.
Oddly, after a few days, it changes and forms what appears to be a face. She tries to scrub it away to no avail, so her husband then tears up the floor and re-cements it. But a week later, the face reappears in the floor, followed by several more.
A number of times they've taken up the floor, they've tried to get rid of them, but the faces just keep coming back.
Word quickly spreads about the phenomenon in Belmez.
There's been a number of investigations and attempts at analysis of the site, and none of them have come up with any evidence of paint or tampering that would lead to a concrete explanation for the existence of the faces.
Even stranger, while researchers were examining the site, a number of long-expired human remains were found buried underneath the house, unbeknownst to the family.
I was able to verify that there was a late 1800 cemetery in that location. It likely was a Catholic cemetery that was long forgotten, and when they needed room to build homes, they just went ahead and built a home over it without realizing that the headstones had been removed.
A lot of the people that visited the Belmez faces thought that the bodies or the spirits or the souls beneath the home were showing themselves through these faces in the floor.
The family has always insisted this was not a hoax. They weren't hand-drawing the faces on their own floor. And though the mother Maria died in 2004, the image continues to draw visitors to the house to this day. But what are they really looking at? Our experts face off.
First, perhaps this could all have been another example of pareidolia, the tendency of humans to see familiar shapes within randomly occurring patterns. But Andrew McCarthy isn't so sure.
Some say that these images could be an accident. Maybe they simply spilled something on the floor which stained it and it resembled a face. Then why does the face keep reappearing time and time again? That seems to rule out a coincidence.
Catholic miracle researcher Michael O'Neill says that while this resembles some confirmed miracles, it can't be classified as such.
There's a case in the 1700s in Austria called Our Lady of Absam. Began to manifest the face of the Virgin Mary. The glass was wiped clean with acid, and the image came back, according to the investigator. And as a result, they declared it to be miraculous. We don't have the same situation now. We don't see in real time the image returning, so it cannot be established as miraculous.
A chemical engineering firm in Spain that analyzed the Belmez faces in 2014 told us their tests using infrared scanning and electron microscopes did not find any traces of inorganic materials like paint where the images appeared. But Mick West thinks it's very possible the faces weren't painted on, but instead created with another technique.
It seems almost like they're removing areas rather than adding to the areas. It's very dark around the outside of the face and then it's white in the middle. So it could just simply be that they've added something like bleach, but then would eventually evaporate and you wouldn't really see any residue of that.
Mick makes an interesting case for bleach, but the most recent testing did not detect bleach or paint. So our verdict, these strange faces remain an unexplained phenomenon until we get more concrete proof.
In November 2017, just as people are clamoring to get their hands on the latest iPhone, the internet is sent into a frenzy, not by some viral dance craze, but by a 19th century Austrian painting. A photo of the expected one by artist Ferdinand Georg Waldmüller starts getting a lot of attention on Twitter.
A lot of people online point out that in her hands there is something very strange and definitely out of place. It looks to be like she's checking her Instagram or TikTok on a smartphone.
Keep in mind, this picture was painted in 1860. The girl's pose is unmistakably that of a distracted pedestrian from today, staring at a handheld device. People online immediately speculated this could be evidence someone in the future invented the ability to travel back centuries and brought back a sample of advanced technology. This is also not the first historic painting where 21st century technology was spotted. This 1937 mural by Umberto Romano seems to show a Native American staring into his own smartphone. And this depiction of God and Jesus in an Italian church fresco from the 1600s had people seeing something else from the heavens.
A lot of people online claim that this image of the Earth with these antennae strongly resembles the Sputnik satellite launched by the Soviet Union in the late 1950s.
But how would late Renaissance painter Ventura Salambaini know what our early satellite technology looked like? Could he have been a visionary genius like Leonardo da Vinci, who prefigured the airplane with this device called the ornithopter? Or did someone from the future really go back in time?
We now know Michelangelo secretly painted anatomically accurate images of the human brain on the ceiling of the Sistine Chapel. So painters can sneak secret images into their work. But an artist hiding evidence of future time travelers would be even more mind-blowing. So is that what we're seeing here? Our experts enlighten us.
First, we asked physicist Dr. Hakeem Oluseyi if time travel is even theoretically possible.
The laws of physics do allow for time travel under certain situations. One of them is when you have a wormhole. If you move around one end of the wormhole at near the speed of light, someone could actually exit the wormhole before they entered it, meaning they went backwards in time.
So it's theoretically possible, but is it probable? We showed the paintings to Mick West. He says these modern-looking objects don't quite add up to clear proof some later generations solved the time travel equation.
If time travelers were coming from 1,000 years in the future, they would bring things from their time. I don't think they would stop off in the early 21st century and pick something up and then go back to the 18th century.
So it seems likely the smartphones are being mistaken for something else. But what?
For the lady that's walking in the meadow, it was very common to have these little books that were devotions or just little religious scriptures. We have those little hymnals in museums that are about roughly the same size that date from that same period.
And as for the Sputnik satellite,
between the Christ figure and God is this huge sphere, which is called a creation globe. The antennae are actually scepters that God and Christ are holding. The Renaissance artist was trying to envision this whole idea of creation with his artistic license.
Clearly, a lot of internet users jump to the same wrong conclusion, and there's a good reason for that.
When our children and grandchildren look back on the artwork that we've done, they may be scratching their heads and wondering, what is that object he's holding in his hand?
So by the time our descendants look at artwork from today, technology will have moved on, and they may similarly confuse certain objects for newer technology that has since emerged.
Our verdict? A collective case of misidentification. We can't rule out that somebody in the future has unlocked the secret of traveling to the past, since even scientists of today say space and time are not absolutes. But these paintings are not proof of that being the case.
It's 2010 near Lake Natron in northern Tanzania. A British photographer travels to the lake with camera in hand and is instantly taken aback by what he encounters. From his photos, you might think that these are pieces of artwork, maybe even wicker creations. But these are real animals, seemingly petrified in place. A frozen flamingo floats on the water while a stock-still songbird perches on a branch. Author Heidi Hollis says these photos are so chilling that they became an internet sensation.
It seemed like they were frozen in mid-motion of living their lives, so it was really just disturbing and really heartbreaking to see.
The animals in these photographs definitely look like they could have encountered the ancient Greek monster Medusa, who turned all who gazed upon her to stone. But there's another theory that hits a bit closer to home.
In that area, there is the legend of Papabawa, which is a bat-like demonic creature that would come and paralyze people in their sleep. And there are many who are suspicious that Papabawa is responsible for killing the animals here at Lake Natron.
There's also a more natural theory about what brought these animals down. Some say the red color of the lake seen in some footage is evidence of toxic algae that is killing the creatures.
What's most curious about Lake Natron is that it doesn't appear to be deadly to all animals. In fact, 75% of the world's population of lesser flamingos live in its lagoon. So who or what happened to these unlucky animals that seemingly froze them in place? Could it be the legendary Popobawa after all? We turn to our experts to investigate.
Science writer Amy Teitel considers the famous legend of Popobawa
According to legend, Popobawa only attack humans with the goal of inspiring fear spreading throughout humanity. So for this demon to hypothetically attack an animal is not how this myth goes.
So let's rule out these mythological beings. Could there be a real-life predator that's causing these animals to freeze at the moment of death? Wildlife biologist Dr. Stephanie Schuttler looks into this theory.
There are animals that can essentially freeze their prey by paralyzing them. Snakes do this with venom. It breaks down different parts of the prey's body and they can't move. And there's the brown recluse spider. When it bites you, it breaks down tissue. But spiders and snakes, they consume the prey that they kill. So it's really strange that we see the bodies of these animals largely intact.
So if it's not a predator, could toxic red algae have killed these creatures? Biologist Dr. Floyd Hayes investigates.
Red tides occur in areas that are rich in nutrients. They're caused by dinoflagellate algae, which produce toxins and can kill organisms, but organisms killed during red tides are not preserved like this. In fact, they quickly disintegrate.
Yet NASA geologist Dr. Bob Anderson thinks the algal blooms may provide a clue.
This is a lake that's associated with volcanism. When you have these nearby volcanoes, a lot of times they have these toxic type of gases in there. These algae are feeding off of the nutrients that are coming from the volcano.
So toxins from volcanic gases or algal blooms may be what's causing these deaths. But then why aren't the animal remains decomposing?
There are a number of lakes that have high concentrations of natron in them that have formed when large amounts of volcanic ash cover the lake, and as the water evaporates, the sodium bicarbonate becomes concentrated. The lake is extremely alkaline. It has a pH of about 9 to 10.5.
And Anderson says it's this high alkalinity that solves the mystery.
This animal looks like he's been exposed to this alkaline type of area. Somehow they get covered up quickly from the water. They're in the muds, and these muds are also very alkaline. And so they actually act as a coating, and they mummify the thing.
Anderson says what the animal's body goes through is also similar to petrification, which turns organic material into fossils.
What happens in this process is that water goes through, and as water is carrying minerals, they take out an organic mineral and replace it with a mineral like quartz or something that's very hard.
Our verdict? So this is really pretty cool. It turns out these animals are not actually petrified, they're mummified. The high alkalinity in the lake from sodium bicarbonate is what causes this process. But that still doesn't explain why the creatures are perfectly frozen in place. Well, we caught up with a photographer and he admits he found them on shore and then posed them like this to achieve that haunting look in his photos.
It's late September 2019 in the coastal town of Weston-super-Mare in England. One morning, a local woman wakes up bewildered at what's taking place in her bedroom. She grabs her phone and starts recording.
I'm in my bedroom and I'm looking at the wall. What is this sorcery that is happening?
The woman holds up her hand in front of the wall in a state of utter shock. The image is blurry, but you can clearly see her pan the camera as a red car drives past a block of buildings.
I am confused at how this is happening.
It appears a row of white houses is being projected onto her bedroom wall. They look like perfectly normal residential buildings, except for one thing. They are all upside down. Journalist Amy Teitel wonders if it's all an illusion.
What's really interesting is her curtains are pretty much completely closed. So it could just be a trick of the light.
When the video gets posted and goes viral, some suggest the buildings are not of our world, but a nearly identical one, a glimpse into another dimension. Is such a portal even possible? Consider that other dimensions might exist, according to something called string theory.
String theory is a theory whereas instead of having atoms as kind of the base layer that creates everything, that everything in the universe is created by one-dimensional strings.
These one-dimensional strings, or filaments of energy, are the smallest objects in the universe, and they're said to vibrate in different patterns.
And these strings can vibrate against each other and create multiple dimensions.
Now, string theory tells us there could be up to 10 or 11 dimensions. So has this woman discovered something big? Or is it just another example of other freaky physics? Our experts untangle what's going on.
We have a scene from another universe right in someone's bedroom. How is that possible?
Theoretical physicist Michio Kaku says something kind of like this is possible theoretically with a wormhole, where two black holes in different universes connect, establishing a doorway between them. But the proof wouldn't look like this.
Now, of course, if a black hole or wormhole were to open up in somebody's bedroom, the energy is so great that anyone's bedroom would be sucked inside, never to be seen again.
If it's not a bedroom black hole, maybe there's a projector hidden in the room. Video analyst Mick West takes a look.
These images are a bit blurry. I think if someone was trying to fake some kind of alternate reality, they would have used a clearer image. We can see that it is actually a projection because she waves her hand and leaves a shadow, so it's not actually something that's added to the video afterwards.
So it's not CGI, but could it be a bit of movie magic coming from an electronic projector? That doesn't explain why the image appears upside down. And West says it doesn't match what he sees from the woman's shadow.
The projector would have to be behind her for her to cast a shadow on the wall. And what's behind her from that perspective is the window. So the projector would have to be basically where the window is.
In the clip, we don't see a projector, but we do see tiny gaps in the curtain.
There's just this one small, thin rectangle, a hole, an aperture. And because this is the only way that light can get in, it's acting as what's called a pinhole camera. The term we use for that is camera obscura.
As light rays hit an object and then travel through the aperture of a pinhole camera, they project the image of an object upside down. This creates the camera obscura effect. And just to prove it conclusively, West has been able to recreate it.
I took this plastic sheet here, and I put it over the window, and it has this little hole in here. And then when I turned the camera around, I could see that there was a projection of my backyard onto the back wall of my garage. And like in the video we saw, I can cast a shadow on it. And here's an image of me walking around, waving this umbrella around, projected onto the back wall of my garage.
Our verdict? This is an example of camera obscura from a pinhole camera accidentally made by the window shade. The buildings we see in the image are actually the neighbors' houses from right across the street. We might not have traveled to a new universe, but we got a good lesson in the science of optics. You passed. Class dismissed.
December 2019. It's just after Christmas in the small community of Porter, north of Houston, Texas. A man is heading out alone on what seems like a normal Lone Star evening. But his doorbell is about to catch something extraordinary. The motion sensor records the man as he exits the front door and strolls casually down the walkway. But as he turns towards the driveway, he freezes momentarily and suddenly vanishes. Watch that again and pay close attention to the ball of light that shoots up to the sky as he disappears. Did we just see an act of teleportation? Journalist MJ Banias, who reports on the unexplained, says it wouldn't be the first reported case.
Cultures and religions have been talking about the ability to travel great distances in a short period of time for generations. In Jewish Kabbalah, rabbis and ascetics could pray and meditate and enter a holy state where they would be able to perform a sort of teleportation act.
Let's teleport back from ancient Israel to modern Georgia. And this internet classic, a high-speed pursuit shot from a police dash cam in 1997.
Police officer is hot on the tail of someone who stole a car and is trying to chase him down. After a bunch of maneuvers on the road, in some bizarre twist, the car thief takes a left turn and disappears through a fence.
Lieutenant Wayne Daniels was at the wheel during this perplexing event.
When it all occurred, it happened so fast. I figured the fence would wrap him up, he'd be in a big old cocoon, but yet the fence was still standing in front of me and keeping me closed off from getting inside the yard. I had no idea to begin with how a car could get through a 10-foot chain link fence.
And just recently, we've seen headlines reporting that teleportation is now a matter of science, at least on the subatomic level.
So the idea has been around since Einstein. We've known that it's possible to teleport at least photons. And even more recently, scientists have been able to use quantum entanglement to teleport larger structures.
Now, based on some physics calculations, it's thought it would require the energy an entire city uses for a year to teleport a human being. But that hasn't stopped people from believing that advanced teleportation tech exists in secret. So do these videos prove it? Let's turn to our experts.
First, Michael Primo examines the doorbell video.
So I've analyzed many Ring camera video recordings, but one thing that they all have in common is that they use a high level of what's called visual compression. So I employed what's called macro block analysis as well as motion vector analysis. These tests reveal that the encoder was not documenting new pixel information for 30 frames. It is entirely possible that this is encoder error. So there's several different reasons as to why this occurred at this specific point in time. The first is there was a drop in the internet connection to which the camera was not transmitting information to the cloud to actually document those frames. The second is simply camera malfunction.
So the glitching doorbell didn't capture teleportation in the act. But how did that car in the police video seemingly teleport to the other side of the fence? After some investigation, Lieutenant Daniels believes he solved the puzzle.
On most fence, when you set the poles, you put the fence on the outside of the poles so that it protects anyone from going through the fence into a yard. This particular fence was set on the back side of the post so that when the car hit the fence, the aluminum ties that hold the fence to the poles popped loose. The fence swung open like a garage door, and before the dust could settle, the fence had done come straight back down in front of me.
So our verdict on both of these videos? The anomaly of the teleporting Texan can be explained by a faulty camera. And the mystery of the vanishing Georgia bandit can be explained by a faulty fence. However, a recent experiment in 2017 by Chinese researchers did manage to teleport the quantum state of a photon to a satellite 870 miles in orbit. Perhaps the days of beam me up, Scotty, could be on the horizon.
It's May 2017, and we're in the lush forest outside Portland, Oregon, where a hiker records a most unusual walk in the woods. Watch that again. The hiker walks through the mirror as though it's an open door, then turns back to see where he came from, and eventually returns back through the mirror. I get it, pretty out there, but if it's an illusion, it's an impressive one, and that's not all.
As he goes through the mirror, you can see that the ivy is on the right side of the tree. But then when he goes back through and he turns around, the ivy is on the left. So it seems like everything has flipped. It's really disorienting.
Now work with us here a minute, because McCarthy points out that modern science is open to the notion of mirror worlds.
There are actually scientists out there who are studying the idea that a mirror universe might actually exist. And they're running experiments using subatomic particles to see if those particles will turn into mirror versions of themselves.
The idea of mirror universes comes from a measurement of neutrons that makes no sense. Neutrons, when taken out of the nucleus of an atom, will decay away.
According to the law of conservation of mass, that can't just happen.
If neutrons are, say, disappearing, then maybe they're disappearing into an alternate parallel universe. Sounds crazy, but this is actual physics that people are testing.
If a parallel universe does exist, has this individual found a portal to it? Before you go running headfirst into your reflection, let's ask our experts to explain.
Our astrophysicist Hakeem Oluseyi says the existence of a mirror universe is theoretically possible, but points out we wouldn't be able to just step into it.
When physicists speak about a mirror parallel universe, they're talking about something similar to what we have, but we don't feel it or interact with it. In this case, the person is still in our universe.
So we need a more prosaic explanation of this footage. And forensic video analyst Mick West thinks he's got one.
So I think what happens here, you get a clue as he gets towards the mirror here. He approaches the mirror at a 45-degree angle, so you can't see his reflection. So I think what happens, and if this was the mirror, you'd come up to the mirror, 45 degrees, you rotate it, come back out again, and turn around. And then you can come back in, do the same thing, come out this way. All you have to do is then cut that video and remove the bits where you turn the camera. It's very, very well done. It's a camera trickery, but it's nicely done camera trickery.
Okay, our verdict. This video was an impressively made hoax. While a mirror universe may still exist, we don't yet have an easy way to visit it. Not through a mirror, and sadly, not through a TV screen either. America's first zoo opened in Philadelphia on July 1st, 1874. Today, there are well over 400 zoos operating in this country, welcoming about 180 million visitors each year. But as you'll see in our next story, maybe humans are not the only ones coming to observe what's inside.
May 21st, 2022, Amarillo, Texas. It's around 1:25 a.m. and the zoo's security cameras are keeping their sleepless eyes on its animals when they capture this. A strange figure just outside the zoo's perimeter lurks in the darkness. As we push in, the figure appears to be standing on two legs just on the other side of the fence, looking inside. Shocked by the size of the creature and its rather wolf-like head, the Amarillo Zoo has begun asking the general public for help figuring out what this UAO, unidentified Amarillo object, could be. Take another look. This bipedal creature is quite puzzling. The image goes viral with thousands of people viewing it.
Now let's take a closer look at this image. A lot of folks have said they can discern fur on this thing's arms and pointed ears on its head. On the other hand, some people say it's standing like a human and it looks like it's wearing pants. And they see this as a jacket. As for me, I have no idea.
Field researcher Ken Gerhardt cites the figure's resemblance to an infamous creature from folklore.
One of the theories is that it could in fact be a chupacabra, a famous creature that has been talked about throughout Latin American culture since the 1990s and is a blood-sucking type of creature. The name chupacabra actually means goat sucker because it's been alleged that these creatures will drink the blood of goats and other small farm animals. I've examined the remains of several creatures that have been called chupacabras. And all of those animals displayed very dog-like features. Pointy ears, long snouts, strange skin, long fangs, other physical abnormalities.
During a 2-month period in 2010, more than 300 goats were slaughtered in rural Mexico. Ranchers believe these deaths resulted from a chupacabra stalking their livestock. So could this image be a chupacabra stalking the zoo? Our experts investigate.
Professor of biology Floyd Hayes begins by estimating the size of the creature.
To me, it looks like the fence itself may be 12 feet high. The animal looks like it's maybe 6 feet behind the fence, which would make it smaller. It appears to be about half the height of the fence. It's maybe about 7.5 feet tall.
That's much bigger than the alleged size of a chupacabra. And there's another issue.
The chupacabra is allegedly a quadrupedal or four-legged animal, but this appears to be bipedal rather than quadrupedal. Bipedal means it's walking on two legs.
Next, wildlife biologist Stephanie Shuttler examines the creature's hair.
Chupacabras are described as being more hairless with gray and scaly skin. In this image, it seems to be more shaggy. It seems to have long hair, especially on top. So it doesn't fit the description.
And even though sightings of the creature have been reported, Shuttler says the proof has yet to be discovered.
Any evidence of animals that were thought to be chupacabras, it always ended up being a canid species like a coyote, dog, or fox with mange.
demodectic mange is caused by a parasitic mite that lives in the hair follicles of canines. To rid themselves of the parasites, canines will scratch their fur and skin until it falls off. But the biggest red flag of all, why the zoo only released one image of such a startling discovery?
Camera traps, when they're triggered, they usually take multiple photos. So I would love to see the photos before and after. There's rarely a singular photo of an animal when the cameras are triggered. I suspect this was a publicity stunt by the Amarillo Zoo. If they really wanted to figure out what this animal was, there would definitely be more photos of it.
Now hold on a second. If this is a hoax, then the zoo has been keeping up the deception for months. Our verdict? Unidentified creature. A Seattle-based company specializing in wireless cameras donated 80 color night vision cameras to the Amarillo Zoo after this image went viral. So should this creature reappear, there should be plenty of proof to determine what it is.
In May 2021, Queensland-based Yowie researcher Dean Harrison and his team are testing out infrared cameras at Springbrook National Park. They picked this spot because they believe they've seen traces of Yowie activity among the brush. And that night, they captured this mysterious footage. The thermal imagery seems to show a solitary figure hiding behind or even hugging a large tree trunk.
Now, this is doing what Yowies do. They hug a tree, pretend they're a part of a tree if there's a human in the area, and they just blend. So you can see him just putting his head in.
Minutes later, the image changes. Now it looks like there's a couple.
Two giant creatures emerge from the foliage, and one is bending down to pick up something.
As it bends over, you can also make out what looks like one of the creature's heads. It looks cone-shaped. The figures are large with wide shoulders and ape-like proportions. Field researcher Cliff Barrickman, who has been to Australia to study the Yowie, says the footage aligns with descriptions from indigenous peoples going back centuries.
All of the Aborigines down there have drawings on the walls of caves depicting these things. They're prevalent in their storytelling traditions as well. But then the settlers came in the late 1700s, and they too started running into Yowies, which is another very strong indicator that they're a real biological animal.
Now, Bigfoot-like creatures are part of folklore the world over. Nepal has the Yeti, Mongolia has the Alma. And one theory is that they all descended from a single Asian ancestor, some of whom made it to Australia, while others crossed the Bering Land Bridge, came to North America, and evolved into Bigfoot. If this video is real, it could help prove that theory, but that's a big if.
There's some sort of subject, creature, person, if you will. It's something that's emitting a heat signature. And as we go through different FLIR filter arrays, this object's movement is consistent. There is something happening in here that's moving around.
Look at the footage with this filter. Now the head comes into better view. It appears to have a pronounced sagittal crest, a ridge of bone along the top of the cranium. It's similar to what's seen in the skulls of the early hominid Australopithecus, which some believe to be the common ancestor of Bigfoot, Yowie, and other similar creatures. But Primo is cautious.
Although we have not found any evidence to support that the recording was fabricated, we have no idea what is being depicted here.
Next, our zoologist Roxy Furman analyzes the anatomy of the figures.
What we can see clearly at one point is that there are two animals pictured. It also looks like it's a bipedal animal, which means it walks on two legs.
That might have you thinking primate, but here's a key fact. There are no known primates native to Australia. In fact, the only bipedal animals are the cassowary and the kangaroo, which look nothing like this. So how do we explain the heat signatures in those head shapes? Furman thinks she may have the answer. People wearing headlamps.
That would explain why the head's a slightly strange shape.
That would mean the people were either misidentified or they're participants in an elaborate hoax, maybe Australia's version of the Patterson-Gimlin film, if that was a hoax too. But anthropologist Kathy Strain says that in this case, size does matter. The research team went back to the spot in daylight and measured the tree, matching the thermal footage as best they could to get a sense of the size of the figures in the infrared video.
Whatever it is more than 8 feet tall. The possibility of them being human is highly unlikely. I came to the conclusion that what this video shows are two real Yowie. I think it is one of the most significant films taken in at least 50 years.
So yes, there's a possibility that this is a hoax. But based on Professor Strain's estimate of the creature's height, we're going to say these are possible Yowies.
Havia Iloilo, Philippines. A CCTV security camera rolls on a warm July evening in 2021. The camera captures a dimly lit street where a woman, later identified in the news as Mary Lou, sits in front of her home cleaning dishes. Unbeknownst to Mary Lou, a stranger approaches from behind. Then quickly, and as quietly as she arrives, the woman continues down the street, reaches a tree, then she seemingly folds over, dropping to the ground. The woman begins to crawl on all fours back towards Mary Lou. Terrified, Mary Lou stands up and threatens to throw a bucket of water at her. The woman turns and runs away. Watch again. This moment, some people say she doesn't just bend over, but transforms. A week later, another alleged sighting in the same village captured on a second CCTV camera. This time, the person or creature switches between crawling and hopping. As we push in, we see a woman exiting her home, then jumping back in shock.
It doesn't look like an earthly sort of creature. The legs are bent in weird directions, and there's this long neck right there.
Field researcher Cliff Barrickman says the sightings made local news, with some believing the video captured a famed Filipino creature known as the Aswang.
One of the many stories about Aswangs is that during the day, they're just like people. They're people in your village that you may even know. But after night falls, they shapeshift. They have this proboscis tongue for lapping up blood. They go down on all fours and change their shape and turns their legs around in weird positions. Aswangs are said to be responsible for miscarriages in the community, or really anything bad, like a child dies of some disease. It's kind of the catch-all boogeyman. If you want your kids to behave, it's like, don't go out there, Aswangs are out there.
The Aswang are believed to take the forms of vampires, were-dogs, and witches. It's said they can be warded off by salt, ash, or urine, depending on whom you ask. Is this mythical creature what we're seeing here? We'll need to ask our experts.
Biology professor Floyd Hayes applies what's known as kinematics to the second video, the study of animal locomotion.
This creature appears to be quite flexible in its mode of locomotion. It appears to be hopping and transitioning between being quadrupedal and bipedal, unlike what's been reported for the Aswang.
Next, he turns to the creature's anatomy.
In my opinion, the body proportions are very similar to a human. The hind limbs appear to be much longer than the forelimbs, and the feet are pointing forward.
When we line up these proportions with that of a human, that certainly looks like a match. As for the head
is rather obscure in the image, but it looks as though it actually removes a hat as it exits the video.
Anthropologist Kathy Strain believes some legends are legitimate sightings of real creatures, but she's skeptical of this particular clip.
This could be a hoax because as the creature comes to this tree, it pops up and it looks over to see if this person is coming out of their door. That is more human-like, and because they want to make sure they're seen.
If it's a fake, Strain thinks it might be serving a higher purpose.
Folklore has a place in society to teach certain skill sets or certain beliefs.
Mythology across all cultures serves to reinforce cultural norms, such as the imperative for children to stay inside at night.
They get them home on time, to be generally afraid of strangers.
And indeed, we tracked down the guy who made the second video, and he admitted he staged the stunt after being inspired by the first Mary Lou video. Not for fun, but to help with COVID quarantine compliance during the pandemic.
After I saw that video, I was thinking that it might be an inspiration for me to do the hoax. So I did the video for the community purposes, just to force the children to stay inside of their home because it was in the midst of pandemic. This is actually the mask that I wearing that time.
So that may explain the second video, but what about the first one that inspired it? Is it possible that an actual Aswang is responsible for terrifying Mary Lou in the alley?
When this lady comes back towards her and gets down on all fours, she's behaving like a typical Aswang, according to Filipino folklore. She's now gone into a different state where she's no longer human, and her trying to get closer to her without being seen indicates to me that she meant that lady harm. But you don't have a clear view of what she looked like once she was totally down on the ground. It's kind of dark, she's behind a fence. I'm willing to say that I don't really know what happened there.
So we have a split decision. We know the second clip is a hoax, but we can't say that for certain about the first. Aswangs are traditionally women, and while we don't know this woman's intent or state of mind, we do know she was crawling, and Mary Lou was genuinely frightened. We'll stay on the lookout for any future Aswang sightings.
April 2022. A couple in their 50s holiday in the Scottish Highlands. After waking up early on a Monday morning and heading out with their camera, the couple is taking in the eerie sight of the still waters of Loch Ness when they record this.
What on earth is it?
Take a closer look as we zoom in and sharpen the image. It looks like a creature moving through the water.
So admittedly, this video was hard to make out, but I want to draw your attention to a couple of features that really intrigue us. First of all, it is this wake that leads us to believe that this is actually a creature moving through the water. And then, this hump right here is so consistent with other sightings of the Loch Ness Monster.
Some researchers have called this the most significant footage to come off Loch Ness in the last 20 years. It doesn't seem to have an artificial or staged quality.
Yeah, it's really pushing forward now.
It seems like whatever they're filming is actually there in Loch Ness.
Field researcher Ken Gerhard says the elusive legendary creature, affectionately known as Nessie, has actually had its fair share of caught-on-camera moments.
The first compelling image of the Loch Ness Monster dates from November of 1933. And then in April of 1934, something known as the surgeon's photo surfaced. It appeared to show a small head, a long neck, and a hump protruding out of Loch Ness, and quickly achieved worldwide fame. Unfortunately, in the 1990s, researchers proved that the surgeon's photo was in fact a hoax.
But the sightings continue to this day. Nessie is often described as an aquatic creature having two humps, which has led to the theory that there is a surviving plesiosaur swimming beneath the surface of the loch.
Plesiosaurs were an archaic marine reptile that lived alongside the dinosaurs up until the end of the Cretaceous period about 65 million years ago. They were about 20 or 30 feet long. They had a very big body with a long neck and a small head, 4 flippers, and a very powerful tail. And in some respects, this does fit some of the eyewitness accounts of Nessie.
But Gerhard says there's a good reason why many Nessie sightings remain unexplained to this day.
Loch Ness is incredibly deep, up to 754 feet. And what's really problematic in terms of research is that the water is very dark.
Despite those challenges, researchers have managed to collect compelling evidence that something is lurking in the loch.
Dating back to 1954, there have been literally dozens of sonar contacts with large animate objects swimming in Loch Ness, 20 to 30 feet long, usually serpentine in shape. And as recently as this year, there was a sonar contact at a depth of about 500 feet of a large serpentine, unidentified object about 20 to 30 feet long, further adding to the body of evidence that the Loch Ness Monster exists.
Loch Ness holds an estimated 263 billion cubic feet of water, which is more than all the water in all the lakes, rivers, and reservoirs in the whole of England and Wales combined. So could this video be the latest proof that Nessie is somewhere in there? We turn to our experts to find out.
Forensic video expert Michael Primo determines if this video is yet another hoax.
In terms of authenticity, nothing appears to be CGI. The video appears to be consistent and plays consistently. No editing or splicing was detected. Through the media interrogation, digital information analysis, through medics, We were able to confirm the authenticity of this video, and it is genuine.
So if the video is real, what are we looking at? We turn to marine biologist Dr. Shay Conger to break it down.
You can actually see, based on the other objects around it, that not only is this animal moving through the water, it's actually navigating. You can see it turn towards the shoreline. To me, that means it's not something being towed or something stuck in the water. This is actually a really large animal, I think, moving across the surface of Loch Ness.
So could a dinosaur, thought to be extinct for 65 million years, really survive in the frigid, murky waters of Loch Ness?
Plesiosaurs did actually inhabit this area, but plesiosaurs were known to be very large, voracious predators. So there would have to be a lot of food to support a remnant dinosaur. It would be very difficult for an animal like a plesiosaur to obtain enough food, so I can rule out that this is some sort of living dinosaur.
Furthermore, Conger says that in one of the biggest DNA studies of its kind, scientists from New Zealand's Otago University were able to identify the presence of around 3,000 species in the deep, dark waters of Loch Ness.
This 2019 study actually ruled out the idea of some plesiosaur living in Loch Ness because there was no genetic material associated with that was found.
DNA from whales and dolphins was also identified in Loch Ness by the researchers. Conger rules those out, though, because you can't see a dorsal fin in the video. But she does have one guess.
The eDNA study actually showed a lot of eel DNA in Loch Ness, and this brings the possibility that maybe the Loch Ness monster is actually just a large eel being sighted at the surface.
If it is an eel, it's huge, which is fascinating in itself.
There's still a mystery that's going on, and we're not really sure what we're seeing in Loch Ness.
Our verdict, we're going to say this is possibly a gigantic eel, though we can't say for certain what species. Perhaps one that hasn't been discovered yet. But the mystery is far from solved, so we'll keep our eyes peeled for more evidence.
July 2020, Montauk, New York. A young couple is walking on the beach. It's midday, and the two are searching for driftwood on the shore.
They noticed some sort of odd smell in the air. As they got closer, they realized there was a dead animal washed up on the beach. Something that definitely does not look normal.
Take a closer look at the dead, decomposing creature of unknown origin.
Its body is bloated, the skin is all tan from probably floating around in the ocean for a couple days, and can you imagine the stench?
The carcass is highly reminiscent of another famous find nearby, the so-called Montauk monster.
News headlines were made around the world in July of 2008 when a bizarre creature washed up on the shores of Ditch Plains.
Everyone had a theory about the 2008 photos. Some wondered if the creature was a turtle without its shell. Some speculated it was a pit bull that had been beaten in an underground dogfight, or a dead raccoon whose hair had come out in the ocean. And what was up with that apparent beak? Might this be something unnatural?
Almost immediately, online conspiracy theories began to circulate that this creature was actually from Plum Island, which is the center of a disease research facility maintained by the United States government.
A 1971 New York Times article described the facility as a devil's island for the deadliest animal disease germs known to man, and the debunked conspiracy theory claimed it was the source of Lyme disease. Adding to the mystery, the rotten corpse disappeared before it could be analyzed.
Well, of course people are going to connect the dots. This thing has to be from that thing because I don't know what this is and I don't know what that is, therefore they're probably related.
During the Cold War, Plum Island was the site of a secret biological weapons program targeting livestock. It's currently run by the Department of Homeland Security. So what to make of this recent grisly discovery? The Montauk monster of 2020? We showed the photos to our experts.
This animal at first glance might seem abnormal.
Marine biologist Dr. Shay Conger considers the Plum Island theory. She says neither of the two Montauk monsters look like mutants.
I can tell that this animal isn't some sort of deformed creature because it has every typical aspect of the skeletal structure of a mammal.
So could it be a sea creature of some kind? Wildlife biologist Lucy Eckersley takes a closer look.
You can see it's got all 4 limbs attached and a thin tail.
That says mammal, and she sees hands, which means it's a land creature.
From what I can see from these pictures, it looks like an animal that walks on all 4s. Maybe it could climb trees as well. It could probably grasp things with its 4 limbs. But it also looks quite stocky and round, so I wouldn't necessarily think it was a fast-moving predator that runs after its prey.
That rules out a canine like a pit bull.
The characteristics that I see here, including the teeth, as well as the body structure, and in particular the small front paws that seem to have very thin, flexible fingers, this is relatively easy to identify as a raccoon.
That's a raccoon? Experts say yes, and the original Montauk monster might have been one too. And that beak? Likely the decomposing bones and cartilage of a snout.
Some of the fur is missing, but most of the muscles are still intact. Many animals, if you take away their fur, look very, very different.
Lucy has a point. Check out this creature. Can you name it? Turns out it's a hairless bear.
And so an animal like a raccoon, if you take away its fluffy tail, it's going to look quite unusual. So I don't blame these people for not being sure what this is.
You know, it never helps matters when the corpses of these animals go missing, fueling talk of conspiracy. But in this case, we can tell a lot from the creature's body structure, teeth, and claws. Our verdict? This is the carcass of a raccoon. May 2021, Saskatchewan, Canada. 2 female security guards are working a 12-hour night shift on a Cree First Nation reserve when they discover they are not alone. The footage shared to TikTok shows a grassy slope beside a parking lot as a robotic voice, a TikTok staple, narrates the user's comment.
When we work night security 8 p.m. to 8 a.m. and we see something coming at us at midnight.
It's difficult to make out, but it appears to be a nearly translucent humanoid figure walking towards the security guards. The figure seems to blend in with the tall grass and has no identifying features. As it gets closer to the car, the camera suddenly turns away and the video cuts out. The footage triggers a frenzy of speculation on TikTok. One of the most popular theories is that the security guards have had an encounter with something called a Skinwalker.
In Native American folklore, and specifically in the Navajo traditions, we hear references to beings known as skinwalkers. And these are shaman or practitioners of dark magic that are shapeshifters, that are able to transform from a human into any type of animal. Typically, it's for malevolent reasons.
In fact, in 1878, the hysteria over skinwalkers culminated in the Navajo witch purge, when 40 suspected witches were killed to restore harmony and balance to the tribe.
These skinwalkers are greatly feared by the Navajo. In fact, it is forbidden to mention the name because it is bad luck and will cause doom to those that mention that name.
There may also be a reason why this creature chose these security guards.
There are theories that these skinwalkers are drawn to certain individuals. The premise behind this is to lure unsuspecting victims deep into the wilderness and to cause them harm, or to assimilate them into skinwalkers themselves.
Since October 2020 alone, hundreds of videos with the hashtag Skinwalker have been posted to TikTok, accounting for 39 million views. So could this meteoric rise in Skinwalker videos lead to incontrovertible proof these evil beings exist?
Wildlife biologist Dr. Stephanie Shuttler analyzes the video and doesn't see much to support the Skinwalker theory.
It looks like a man walking, but you don't really see any clothing. It seems to be like an all-gray figure. To me, it's strange that if they can make shapes into different animals, they seem very human-like, and it doesn't seem to resemble any animal in this area at all, or even any exotic animals.
And she says there's an even bigger red flag.
I also don't understand why the camera drops down. I understand they're scared, but if they're really interested in getting this, it seems like they would have the camera on the whole time.
Next, we take the video to science writer Mick West, who's fully willing to give it the benefit of the doubt.
It could actually be some kind of cryptid coming out of the foliage toward the car, but because it's such a low resolution video and because it's so highly compressed, we can't do the normal types of analysis that we do to see if there are indications of fakery.
Still, West isn't ready to call this a legitimate skinwalker. Instead, he offers up another theory.
Kind of see a shape suddenly appear out of the foliage, and it's amorphous and it looks like a figure walking towards the road. If someone wanted to fake this or someone was trying to scare somebody else, then you could very easily get this effect just by having somebody in a green camouflage suit and just kind of come out of the background. It is possible that there are some kind of strange creatures out there in the desert that we haven't discovered before, but this really isn't very good evidence of it. So I think I'm going to have to go with a guy in the suit.
We're going to go ahead and call these sightings a human, probably using some kind of camouflage like a ghillie suit. So no need to cancel your upcoming camping plans. But keep your eyes and ears open, and if something comes at you, well, we suggest you run away, just in case.
October 2016, Craig McKay of Alaska's Bureau of Land Management is overlooking the Chena River in Fairbanks when he notices something extremely peculiar in the water. It looks to be around 20 to 25 feet long, and when we zoom in, it appears to be swimming against the current.
I looked down and saw this really bizarre object. It was much larger than anything I'd seen in the river, and it was undulating or swinging back and forth in the current. It was really spooky.
Given the location of this discovery, field researcher Ken Gerhardt says we should consider the local folklore.
In Alaska, we do have a number of legends of water creatures. The Inuit culture talks about something called the Tizharuk, which is a long serpentine animal with a long head, a prominent tail fin. There are many tales of the Tizharuk actually snatching people off of bridges or out of canoes and devouring them voraciously.
Gerhardt says descriptions of the Tizharuk vary, but the most terrifying form is said to be a giant eel-like creature with transparent skin, which not only allows observers to see still digesting victims, but also makes the creature less visible when stalking its prey.
In addition, we have the Lake Iliamna monster, which is also known as the Jigignak. This particular monster has been reported several times. It's described as being 10 to 30 feet in length, with a torpedo-shaped body and kind of a dull aluminum color. So, we have to ask the question, could this be related to those stories?
Early stories of the Jig-Ignak described fish-like monsters traveling in groups and attacking canoes. So is that or one of its descendants what we're looking at here? Let's let the experts decide.
Marine biologist Dr. Shay Conger says if this thing were a snake, it's unlikely to have accumulated snow on his back. And as for serpents,
There's no water snakes in Alaska. This is because reptiles and amphibians are exotherms. They're reliant on the environment to maintain their body heat, and there really isn't enough heat to allow these species to persist in this area.
so Dr. Conger turns for clues to the hydrology of the scene, the motion of the water.
It seems to kind of be moving back and forth through the water, as you would expect an animal with a tail to be swimming against the current.
But hold on, look again.
When the video zooms out a little bit, you can actually see that this object doesn't seem to be moving forward at all. Rather, it's just fixed in place and being hit by the moving current downriver. Therefore, I conclude this isn't a biological object. Rather, it's some type of debris like a piece of rope or a fishing line encased in ice.
So there you have it. Our verdict, based on Dr. Conger's hydrology analysis, this is a frozen rope. But sightings of Alaskan lake and river monsters continue to this day. Are they all misidentifications? Or is there really something down there? We'll keep looking for more video until we have an answer. It's been said that Bigfoot exhibits nocturnal behavior, perhaps to hunt or to avoid detection. But the cloak of darkness couldn't hide the creature in the stunning footage you're about to see, captured by two campers armed with a night vision camera.
It's May 2012 near the town of Quincy, Florida. Retired Army Ranger Stacy Brown Sr., now deceased, and his filmmaker son, Stacy Brown Jr., are camping in Torreya State Park on a search for the elusive Bigfoot. They start hearing some noises, so they pull out their FLIR thermal camera and head off down a trail.
We would hear something running on our right, and then we would hear something running on our left, and it stopped real quick. And then Dad looked up at the, up there at the tree, and he's like, oh, I see something.
The thermal camera is rolling as Stacy Sr. notices a little black object sticking out of one side of a tree.
Then it takes off and crosses this gap, and he goes into full-blown panic mode. The camera goes dead. He's like, we gotta go, we gotta go. He's like, do you got your gun?
Back at their truck, Stacy Jr. gets a first peek at this eye-popping footage, and this money shot that looks just like the iconic look-back frame of Patty from the famous Patterson-Gimlin film, which claimed to capture Bigfoot strolling alongside a Northern California creek in 1967.
I knew exactly what we had on camera. It was proof to me and my dad, because who on a Tuesday night is a mile and a half into the woods running around with no flashlight?
Noted Bigfoot investigator Steve Cole says he's not surprised by the area where this footage was captured.
In Florida, they have something called the skunk ape, and there's been a lot of sightings over many years of what they describe as a Bigfoot type of creature. What they call that is the skunk ape, partly because it smells skunky. But for all intents and purposes, it's the same thing as a Bigfoot. It's not quite as big or robust as the ones in, say, the Pacific Northwest, but that is kind of expected due to the climate being a lot more tropical.
These swamp sightings go back to the native tribes. The Seminoles and the Muskogee called the creature Esti Japjaki, or Tall Man, and claimed he was the protector of the forest. So could this be what the Browns encountered? We turn to our experts for answers.
We first ask the most obvious question. Could this just be a person?
It was shot with a thermal imager, and so it's picking up the heat signature. Typically, if any clothing is being worn, it masks the intensity of the heat emanating from those covered parts of the body. Honestly, don't see any of that. It's just a pretty uniform signature that would suggest a body a la naturale.
But why would a person be walking around nude in the woods? Wildlife biologist Stephanie Manka instead notes the way the figure moves seems more like a different animal that doesn't wear clothes.
It looks to be like a large primate, but it doesn't seem to match the body structure of the living apes, of chimpanzees or gorillas being the most prominent ones. It seems like its legs are too long, and when gorillas walk on their hind legs, they're not hunched over like that, they're more upright.
Some have theorized that gorillas or large chimps could have escaped from one of the private zoos that have littered Florida over decades. But anthropologist Kathy Strain says neither this creature's morphology nor its gait support that theory.
The way it comes out of the trees is what we call a Groucho walk. It's very typical of what witnesses say Bigfoot walks like. You can see it on the Patterson-Gimlin film. You can see it in other examples where it's this strangely bent knee gait. It seems to be out of human proportions in the sense that you can't see a neck. It has very beefy looking arms. It has interesting legs that seem shorter than what you would see in humans.
Whatever this was pretty big, in excess of 6.5, 7 feet in height perhaps, and quite bulky. It appears very substantial. That is, the arms and the legs are not spindly. They appear to be thick and muscular.
Or could this all just be a hoax?
In order to have this video be credible, I would expect to see a lot more thermal imagery through the trees. I wouldn't expect it to just completely disappear.
Stacy Brown Jr. claims the reason the clip ends is because the camera stopped working. So what does Meldrum think?
I know Stacy, actually, personally, and have visited with him. I have no reason to suspect that he contrived this, and so the only other question would be, is anyone foolish enough to traipse around buck naked in the dark?
Our verdict? Unknown creature. Given that this footage was filmed at night with an early generation thermal imaging camera, we don't quite have enough information to reach a definitive answer. But whether this was indeed the Florida skunk ape or merely a subspecies of Florida man with a proclivity for nocturnal nudism, we can say this: the situation definitely warrants further investigation.
It's April 2009, and Chuck Newton has taken his young son into the Appalachian Mountains of Virginia to have some fun with the family's ATV. Chuck barrels over rocks in the ravine, showing off for his young son, when suddenly something strange appears, a hairy humanoid crossing their path nonchalantly. Chuck stops cold in his tracks.
What was that?
It's a wide shot, so let's push in and slow down so you can get a better look. We see that it's a bipedal figure that appears to be very large from this perspective, possibly exceeding 7 feet in height.
What was that?
Field researcher Cliff Barrickman says Bigfoot sightings in this area go all the way back to Native Americans.
In Virginia, the Cherokee people had stories of giant hair-covered people-like things in the woods. They were doing the same sort of things as the people of the Pacific Northwest described. The most reasonable explanation for these different people describing the same animals is that they were describing the same animals. Sasquatches have a continent-wide distribution.
During the turn of the 20th century, local newspapers in the area reported on strange Sasquatch encounters.
An old newspaper report from 1892 reports a large upright being with thick hair covering its head and shoulders. But the word Sasquatch didn't exist then. They chose to call it the wood booger.
The wood booger was rumored to be a horrifying sight that was known to carry away small children who wandered off in the night.
And booger, or wood booger, actually shares some of the same word roots as boogeyman and are used in much of the same way. A lot of times people will say, now you don't go out in the woods at night because the booger will get you.
Although this video has its fair share of skeptics, Barrickman thinks this could be real.
I find Chuck's reaction to be very natural, unstaged. When he turns and looks at the camera and points it, did you see that? And then he immediately looks back and watches the animal as it walks away. I find that many times hoaxers focus on the camera itself instead of at this amazing thing that they just saw that was unexpected right in front of them. I've had the opportunity to go to this location with the witness, Chuck, and I found him to be very believable.
Interesting fact, Sasquatch sightings gained momentum in the American South right after the Civil War. One theory is that Confederate soldiers who refused to surrender and hid out in the woods were being mistaken for these hairy creatures. Of course, that doesn't explain the older Native American legends. Let's see what our experts have to say.
The creature that we're seeing in this video is clearly bipedal. The only other animal in this area that would be able to walk bipedally would be a bear walking on its hind legs. But when they do, they typically waddle more and take shorter steps. This being is clearly taking larger steps than a black bear would.
So if it's not a bear, could we be looking at a real-life Bigfoot? Biologist Floyd Hayes isn't so sure.
I'm just a little astonished to see that it's just casually crossing the stream. Doesn't seem to be the least bit concerned about this loud, noisy vehicle that's approaching it. I think this is either a human being in an ape-like costume that's crossing the river, or it is a fabricated video.
Anatomy professor Dr. Jeff Meldrum disagrees. He finds that this behavior could be perfectly acceptable for a Sasquatch.
The two most common circumstances under which encounters occur are on roads or near water. And so here we have the latter, and even an ATV trudging up that creek bed might not have sounded as intrusive or intimidating as it would otherwise, given the muffling effect of the white noise of the stream. The witness interaction with the videographer is also very spontaneous, very natural, very convincing.
What was that?
And as for this being a man in a suit, Meldrum is doubtful, but is hesitant to make the call without evidence of the actual scale of this creature.
I would probably put it at no more than 7 feet. All these off-the-shelf costumes are made for average people, but they're not made for a 7 or 8 foot tall person. So if we could establish larger size, that would certainly lessen the chances of it being someone donning a costume.
Our verdict, an unknown mammal. Our experts are stumped, and honestly, I am too. If this is not a hoax, it's nice to know that some Sasquatches seem pretty content to mind their own business when humans disturb them.
This story begins all the way back in 1991 in the Blue Mountains of Washington State, just north of Mill Creek. Former U.S. Forest Patrolman and Bigfoot investigator Paul Freeman has come here with a colleague looking for evidence of Bigfoot.
Sure enough, what they found were hundreds of tracks of a Sasquatch.
Freeman measures the prints and makes these plaster casts. He's convinced this area is a Bigfoot hotspot, and over the years, the evidence just keeps piling up. 1992, in the neighboring Deduct Spring area of the Blue Mountains, Freeman shoots this video showing what he claims is a Bigfoot ambling through the woods. The creature allegedly left more prints, like this. And 4 years later, even more prints found in the moist ground in the nearby 5 Points area. Look closer. These whoppers are 14 inches long. If they're real, whatever left them is big, really big.
Many of these footprints penetrate into the ground quite deeply. And this photograph right here, you can see right there, the mid-tarsal pressure ridge.
Check it out. According to Barrickman, this mid-tarsal pressure ridge is one of the key differences between human and Sasquatch anatomy.
Behind the metatarsals is a big jumble of bone right beneath the ankle. But that jumble of bones in human beings, it doesn't bend at all because we have an arch that holds our foot stiff. But Sasquatches can actually bend their foot to some degree at that location. It is called the mid-tarsal joint.
Of course, some have claimed this was all one big hoax perpetrated by Freeman, but Barrickman says we know what faked prints look like. You can see when we compare Freeman's to a known fake made with a wooden prosthetic. It sure looks like there's a difference.
Upon push-off, sometimes a mound of dirt is raised up behind the metatarsals. This was not possible with a fake wooden prosthetic.
The idea of the mid-tarsal break was actually developed by our very own Bigfoot expert, Jeff Meldrum. Meldrum's hypothesis has been, no pun intended, a major step in the investigative research of Sasquatches. Let's see what our experts have to say about these particular prints.
Anthropologist Kathy Strain explains there's always been some skepticism when it comes to the findings of Paul Freeman.
A lot of people said he found so much evidence. He was outside all the time, and he found prints here, and he found prints there. And he has that well-known video that there's just no way that he could be authentic.
We know Professor Meldrum believes in Bigfoot, but he's also on the lookout for any potential hoaxes. That's why Meldrum decided to drop in unexpectedly on Freeman to verify his evidence firsthand.
I was a bit incredulous, but I thought, what have I got to lose?
Then he saw the latest 5 Points tracks up close. Meldrum quickly concluded they couldn't be prints from some local animal.
And the most likely candidate out there is the bear. The bear isn't completely flat-footed. Its heel does not entirely rest on the ground. The heel of a bear has a very pointed in appearance as opposed to the very rounded, full heel pad of the Sasquatch foot.
But the real aha moment was, you guessed it, evidence of that same mid-tarsal ridge ruling out prints made by any human foot.
The heel is elevated, this retaining that midfoot flexibility, the advantage of a very flexible grasping foot for climbing up into trees. Another one that jumped out is this track from Mill Creek in 1991, separated by a considerable number of years, and yet showing this exact proportions, the orientation.
Now, to quote Lewis Carroll, it gets even curiouser. Since all of these prints show evidence of the mid-tarsal ridge and are the same size, Meldrum and Cliff Barrickman not only believed that these prints are real, but that they could be coming from the same individual specimen of Bigfoot.
This particular animal's footprints have been found on a number of occasions. In 1991, 1992, 96.
There were remarkable similarities that suggested these could in fact be the same individual.
And get this, based on research, Meldrum thinks Sasquatches can live to be about 30 to 50 years old. So this specimen could very well be at least 15 to 25 years of age.
This evidence demonstrates the existence of an unrecognized species.
Our verdict? Potential primate print. We're sure these prints don't come from a bear. They sure look different from known fakes. And that mid-tarsal ridge appears to eliminate the human foot, too. If they're real, they could be valuable evidence in proving Bigfoot's existence.
It's January 2022, and Boyd Sims, a Proof Is Out There viewer, is on a month-long expedition 50 miles north of Houston, Texas, in the Sam Houston National Forest. He is there to record wildlife sounds, and what he discovers is music to his ears.
I couldn't believe what I was hearing. I was shocked. I was in shock.
Boyd has made dozens of strange recordings of what he describes as Bigfoot calls.
I spent years looking for explanations of the audio recordings I have and can't find any animal that makes any of the sounds that I have recorded. Sasquatch is definitely here in Texas.
This area of the country has a ton of Bigfoot reports out of it, dating back into the 1800s. I have personally spoken to a dozen or two people that have seen Sasquatches in this area. One fisherman found footprints. They were about 13 inches.
In fact, there are more than 40 Sasquatch reports a year inside the Sam Houston National Forest.
That's a pretty significant number of people that have seen Sasquatches in this area.
Boyd's recordings are hardly the first time an alleged Bigfoot sound was captured. Made in the early 1970s, the Sierra sound recordings are touted as the gold standard of evidence for Bigfoot language. According to one respected linguist, these sounds captured in California's Sierra Nevada mountains reveal an actual intelligent conversation in an, as of yet, undocumented language. Could we be hearing more evidence of Bigfoot talking in Boyd's recordings? We'll let our expert sound off.
The whoops may be the means by which males and females of this relatively solitary, widely dispersed, very rare species find a mate. These loud calls are probably territorial. By comparison, large male orangutans broadcast their territory by a loud, raucous call that booms out through the jungle. They've even developed extensive laryngeal air sacs that act as almost like amplifiers. And so it stands to reason that perhaps Sasquatch have these same air sacs.
Meldrum suggests that these air sacs may also enable Sasquatches to produce infrasound, a low-frequency sound used by animals such as elephants and whales. These sounds allow animals to communicate at great distances and can even affect the physiology of the listener.
It can cause the stimulation of receptors in the brain that will evoke fear and trepidation, as well as other emotions. I've talked to witnesses who said, that their very core vibrated from the intensity and the pitch of these sounds.
Could Sasquatches possibly be using infrasound to keep people away as a desperate effort to keep their dwindling species alive? We checked in with forensic audio analyst Dr. Robert Maher, who first compares the recording to known animals found in the area, starting with the wild boar.
It's making a kind of a chirpy kind of sound rather than a long howl like the Sam Houston recording.
If it's not a boar, could it be another local animal like the fox? Maher doesn't think so.
Rather than being a howl, it's much more of a modulating kind of thing. So it didn't seem like the fox would be a likely candidate.
However, when it comes to the coyote,
we can see the sound starts at a lower pitch, goes up, and then sustains at that level. And that's similar to what we heard in the Sam Houston recording. I can't say that it's absolutely certain, but it's similar enough that I think that's a possibility.
okay, so maybe a coyote. But what about the big man himself? Maher checks for a Bigfoot match using the popular Sierra sounds.
We see a continuous sort of tone, but it's very short in duration and tends to be more of a yippy quality, where the observation in Sam Houston was more of a howl. The characteristics are different enough that they're not the same source.
Our verdict? Unknown animal noises. While we have ruled out most of the local wildlife, the coyote was similar, but not a clear match. And the Sierra sounds had a different tone. Nothing lined up well enough to make a clear call. But if you ever find yourself in the Sam Houston National Forest, like Boyd, be prepared for something strange to happen. Be prepared to record it, and be prepared to run.
May 23rd, 1997, the Catskill Mountains of New York, and Doug Pridgeon is filming his friends around a fire. It's a Friday night, and they're camped out for a nearby music festival, but they are not alone.
Are we filming now?
We're filming.
Okay, over here.
In the background of the footage, a shape emerges between the trees. It appears to be a small bipedal creature that proceeds to climb and swing from the branches. Look again, especially at that swinging motion.
This is not a dude in a suit. There's no way a person could imitate that kind of motion up in a tree. Most of those branches probably couldn't even support an adult human male's weight. It has to be an ape of some sort. I think that is a Sasquatch doing baby Sasquatch stuff up in a tree.
While reported sightings of young Sasquatch-like primates are rare, they do exist, including one story from British Columbia that dates all the way back to the 1800s.
The story goes that on the Trans-Canadian Railroad, the railroad workers saw a juvenile Sasquatch, even though they didn't call it that because the word didn't exist yet. They hit it with a rock, knocked it out, and basically captured it. People came and looked at it. A couple newspaper accounts depict how big it was, how tall it was. It wouldn't eat this, it would eat that, and then it disappears. Some people think that they are gonna ship it back to the UK and it died in transit and they threw it overboard. Dr. Grover Krantz suggested that perhaps P.T. Barnum bought it because it was around that time that Jojo the Dog-Faced Boy became part of the traveling circus for P.T. Barnum.
Barrickman also believes that if you look closely, you can actually see a potential mama Sasquatch in this footage.
Right there. Look at that. It's moving. It just moved back that direction. One of the most common misconceptions about Bigfoot is that it is an individual, but it's not true. They clearly reproduce as any normal animal would. And right here, this is the proof of that. We have a larger one down below and a juvenile up in a tree.
Many Sasquatch researchers believe the reason juvenile Bigfoot sightings are so rarely documented may be the same reason you've probably never seen a baby pigeon or a baby squirrel. The mothers of these animals secretly protect their young offspring in secluded nests or shelters until the moment they are big and strong enough to reveal themselves to the outside world. Let's see if this potential baby Bigfoot is ready to reveal himself to our experts.
Some question if this could possibly be a human child swinging on these branches?
The problem is humans, for all their agility, don't have the capability to cavort around amongst the branches of a tree as the individual that I witnessed in this film. That points to at least the infant being something other than human.
So, If it's not human, what about a small bear? Infant bears are known to climb trees, but Meldrum says this creature's anatomy is much closer to an ape's.
Its limb proportions aren't that different from a small chimpanzee. Either what we're looking at is something like a chimpanzee infant, or it is a young Sasquatch.
Private investigator Steve Culls was one of the first people to investigate this mysterious video.
We had to confirm, and we did with the property owner, that they did not allow any animals whatsoever on the property because of insurance purposes. I did make calls around to see if there was any escapes from zoos or medical laboratories, and there weren't.
We checked with wildlife biologist Stephanie Manka to see if she could shed any light on this potential primate.
So based on primate behavior, I would expect the young to be closer to the adults because primates, they tend to have fewer young, and the young tend to stay around the mother for a long period of time. I wouldn't expect it to be so far away from the mother in the trees. And I highly doubt that a mother with its young would bring it so close to people at an event like a music festival where there is a lot of noise and a lot of people there.
In fact, it is this behavior that makes Manka disagree with Meldrum on the potential identity of these creatures.
With bears, they love to scavenge on human food. And in fact, a festival like this could even attract bears because they could realize that there's a lot of free food around for them to scavenge. Black bears can easily climb trees, and often moms will encourage their cubs to go up trees to protect them from predators. I think it's most likely a bear cub that's swinging in these branches and not a primate.
Our verdict? Unidentified animal. Manka thinks the creature's behavior says bear cub, while Meldrum thinks its limb proportions mean primate. Seems like the only thing our experts can agree on is that whatever this thing is, it certainly isn't human.